Welcome to the Dauber's Guide for Sealed for the Undaunted Raid. In this video I'll be going over the rules for Sealed, talking about some interesting stats, and going over all commons, uncommons and character cards that could appear in your Sealed pool. So what is Sealed? Sealed is a limited format where you open 6 booster packs and you try to build a 40 card minimum deck plus your character card out of those 6 packs. There's also a few changes to the core game rules. So when you would cycle, you only cycle 5 cards instead of the regular 10. Symbol restrictions are ignored for the cards you play, but cards that require a specific symbol to use the ability still require that symbol. You can play more than 4 copies of the same card. If you feel you need any extra foundations, you can turn a card face down in its sleeve and play it as a blank 2 difficulty 5 check plus 3 mid block foundation. And if this is at the pre-release event, you may also play your pre-release promo, which in this case is an action card. To help you dominate your sealed event, I've jotted down some rough deck advice. Remember that 40 cards is the minimum, and you can run more in your deck if you wish, which might be relevant given that Sir Night Eye is a mill character. As a rule of thumb, I try to stick between 14 to 16 attacks minimum. If it's a more aggressive set, I might play more attacks, but I rarely play less than 14. On the same hand, I try to stick to 24 to 26 non-attacks minimum because you still want to maintain a good balance to allow you to pass checks. Actions and assets are nice, but you want to make sure you've got a good amount of foundations to help you pass checks before you consider including these cards. Since we know that you'll have 6 characters to choose from, you'll have 5 characters that you have the option of using as a buddy block. Basically this term just means it's a character card in your deck that you're playing for the +0 mid block and the 6 check. It's not a bad idea to run these, but I would watch the number that I'm including, especially if I'm also playing a couple of actions or assets. In Sealed, it can help to lay out all your cards to make sure you've read everything so you can catch any interesting interactions, and also so you can start making cuts from there. Instead of building a deck from 0 to 40, instead you can think of it as bringing a deck down from 60, and that can sometimes make it easier on new players. Lastly, you also want to try and have some way to spend momentum in your deck, and be aware if you don't, so you know not to take it during the game. So moving on to some stats, it should be noted that a lot of the time when I'm speaking about the cards in the set, I'm just going to be completely ignoring rares, ultra rares and secret rares, since there's no guarantee of which you'll open. When we look at something like this with the attack zone breakdown, I am only calculating it based on the commons and uncommons that you're likely to see. When you open your sealed pool, you should have roughly 36 commons, 18 uncommons, 6 characters, 5 rares and 1 ultra rare. Now this doesn't equate for XRs, but it gives you a rough idea of the breakdown. There are 38 commons and 27 uncommons in the set, 26 of which are attacks and 36 are foundations. This means about 40% of the cards you open should be attacks, which breaks down nicely for us. When we have a look at the attack zone breakdown, we see there's only 4 low attacks, there's 16 mid and there's 8 high. This just means that low blocks aren't going to be as useful as the other 2, with you wanting to prioritise mid blocks as that will be the most common zone. When we have a look at the block zone breakdown, we see that there is 19 lows, 23 mids and 23 high. It's worth noting here that this isn't including the 18 other mid blocks that will appear on character cards. We have 13 reasons to take momentum, including 2 of it being cards that go face up. This will range in a bunch of different effects from Powerful 2 to EX, to some attacks or foundations having an E discard momentum ability. There is 13 cards that interact with cards not being played from hand, which seems to be a sub-theme for the set. It's worth keeping an eye on the ones that you have opened in your pool, and seeing if there's any way to meet this requirement to turn the ability on. So kicking off the characters, we have Kirishima 3. He's a 7 hand size 20 health character with 3 separate abilities. An enhance that cares if your fury or punch attack was partially blocked that will cause your rival to lose 2 health. and 2 different once per turn responses. One stops an attack that was completely blocked from dealing damage, and the other one has you destroy a foundation after an attack is blocked to cause your rival to also destroy a foundation. So Kirishima 3's not too bad, right? There's 12 punch/fury options in the set at common and uncommon, so getting this enhance ability off is quite likely. I don't see the damage response doing much since there are only 2 throws at this rarity and the attack must be completely blocked, which normally just means it's doing no damage anyway. The response for destroying foundations though could come in useful if you're able to outbuild your opponent since you are a 7 hand size character, and there's a few foundations that care about entering the discard pile during the combat phase. Overall, he definitely seems fine to play. Fat Gum is a 5 hand size 29 character with an enhance and a first form. As a character, they don't care about any specific keyword, which means they have a wide range of attacks that they'll be happy to play. But as a downside, to make Fat Gum really work, you need to also open a copy of Fat Gum 2. So looking at Fat Gum 1 in isolation, they have an ability that will help you build by enhance commit, reveal top 4 cards of your deck, build 1 foundation or asset and discard the rest. This can also enable some of the abilities on foundations or assets that want to enter the discard pile during the combat phase or enhanced it. And then the second ability is a first form. If you're in deadlock or have 10 or less health, you search all your game zones for a copy of Fat Gum 2 and build it. It's unlikely you'll get to trigger this second ability because it requires you having a Fat Gum 2. But I don't know if a 5 hand size 29 health character who potentially lets me build 1 foundation per turn really does enough to justify choosing over any of my other options. This obviously changes if you manage to get a second character, but if you only open Fat Gum 1, I would just use it as a buddy block. I know this isn't the next character by set number, but it's the one that makes the most sense to talk about next. So we have Fat Gum 2, 6 hand size, 10 health, who cannot be your starting character. When you build it, it becomes your starting character. You draw 3 cards and remove all copies of Fat Gum 1 from your stage, and has 2 different enhances. Twice per turn on your turn you get to discard a card, flip and commit 1 rival foundation. And you can enhance remove 2 foundations to give this attack +1 speed and +3 damage. So this is the Fat Gum payoff, right? So Fat Gum 1 wants to build up his staging area, get into deadlock, have a lot of resources, and then first form, flip out, get to draw 3 bonus cards, then come in and spend those foundations to pump the stats on his attacks. Whether this is going to work in a limited format though remains to be seen. If you manage to open a Fat Gum 1 and a Fat Gum 2 in your sealed pool, I think you owe it to yourself and the rest of the community to play that character, since only a handful of people will get the chance in limited formats. Onto the character I'm expecting to be the most popular at sealed events. It's Midoriya 4, the 5 hand size 30 health character, an enhanced that gives your non-throw attack that has Fury or Punch powerful 4 and allows you to discard 1 card from hand in addition to momentum when paying for the powerful. And a response that says at the start of your rival's combat phase, draw 3 cards and then discard down to your printed hand size. So similar to Kirishima, Midoriya has 12 Fury and Punch attacks that they can make use of at common and uncommon. The response definitely shouldn't be underestimated since it allows for riskier plays throwing out big attacks with this powerful ability, since you know you'll always go to your opponent's turn with at least 3 cards in hand as long as you haven't committed Deku. I think this character has a chance to be a real powerhouse in limited, and the only reason that I think you should not consider running them is if you open less than 8 Punch or Fury attacks in your pool. Onto the first character that has the ability to play cards from a zone other than their hand. Kendo Rappa is a 6 hand size 28 health character with 2 response abilities. The first allows you to increase your check by 2 when you attempt to play or block with an attack for the low cost of destroying 1 foundation. And the second one is a response once per turn, discard a card after your non-throw punch attack deals damage and you get to play it again as your next form. So Rappa only cares about punch attacks, of which he gets access to 9, which is still an okay amount in sealed. I think what you really want to look for is abilities that will trigger off of this once per turn when you replay the punch, and if there's any foundations that you'll be committing for some sort of stat or use that you wouldn't mind destroying to get the most out of that top response for plus to your checks. I think pool dependent, this character could be incredibly strong, but even if you don't open that many punches, a character that can easily give +2 to their checks may still be worth considering if the rest of your characters are quite mixed. So we're on to Nedry Haddle. I'm probably butchering the names of some of these characters. 7 hand size, 21 health, a responsibility that gains his health, and an enhance ability that permanently reduces maximum health. You're going to need to keep track of your maximum health and how much damage you've taken during the course of the game. The top ability is neat, response once per turn after you play a block with a foundation you gain 2 health. So you can gain 4 health back per turn cycle, but it doesn't really do much unless you've been taking damage or you've got ways to pay health for abilities, since the enhance reduces the maximum value and you won't be able to go back up to 21 once you start using this. She's a character that doesn't care about any specific keyword traits, you're just going to be able to play good stuff in her. And I feel like that's the core ideal. You want to be using her ability purely to pump the damage of your own attacks and only using the minus speed when you absolutely need to. She feels very all or nothing, and I feel a lot more game to play her than what I would have been for Darby in set 4. Definitely a character I would be interested to try. Sword Night Eye is a 6 hand size, 27 health character who is this set's mill character. They have a response once per turn. After an attack is completely blocked, you get to seal 1 non-character card in your rival's stage or card pool and draw 1 card. Worth noting that this can be used on either player's turn, so if you block you get to seal an attack that's sitting in the pool that's giving them some sort of bonus, or you get to seal a problematic foundation. If it's your turn and you're attacking and they block with something that has breaker, you can seal the block to take the breaker off it before they get to trigger it. Either way you also get to draw a card. His enhance is your attack only and causes you to remove the top card of your deck from the game, but your opponent discards the top 3 cards of theirs and then removes all non-attack cards discarded this way. To go a step further, it then increases the speed of your attack for every 5 cards in your rival's removed from game pile. So over the course of the game this could really add up. As far as the mill strategy goes in Limited, he only has access to really his support. I guess there's an argument sake that you could use Confession to mill people 1 card at a time, but that's not going to make as much of an impact. You're realistically looking to be throwing a lot of attacks with Night Eye and constantly triggering his E. This could just lead to you killing people by damage as your attacks get progressively faster and faster instead of decking them out. Either way, I think Sir Night Eye is a character to watch in this format. He may be lacking the power that Deku has, but the versatility in the Alt 1 condition could make him a key player in Limited. Squid Boy is a 7 hand size, 20 health character who guarantees 1 momentum as long as they attacked each turn. They have a once per turn enhance that can either give plus or minus X damage. X is equal to the amount of your face up momentum plus 2. And they have a once per game enhance that allows you to choose 3 momentum and flip them face up. So I don't know how relevant this once per game enhance will be. I guess if you manage to get some hits in to the point where you're gaining more than just the 1 momentum off your static ability, you can then once per game flip them face up and then it'll fuel your damage enhance. Okay, so maybe the once per game enhance is actually still going to be a bit relevant. With only 2 cards that care about being face up and momentum at common and uncommon, you don't get access to much of his support, but the fact that regardless he can always give +2 or -2 damage once per turn probably means that he's still relatively playable. It's also nice having something that interacts with momentum on your character. Don't get me wrong, I think I would still be looking for something that could spend the momentum just in case the game goes late and I need to get those attacks back out of there. Yu Hojo is another 5 hand size, 29 health character, and they have a first form that allows them to draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, and then you may play 1 attack from your discard pile that shares 2 or more symbols with this character as your next form this turn. Remove it after it resolves. Now sadly there's only 4 attacks at common or uncommon that meets this requirement, so the ability to be a pseudo 6-hander is kinda mitigated here. You still get the chance to draw 2, discard 2 at the start of each of your turns though, which could prove beneficial. It has an enhance that cares about being at 10 or less health to give +1 speed and +2 damage to your attacks. And another one that says destroy 1 foundation to give this attack -2 damage. So it's nice that once he gets down to this low health level, he's got a chance to try and catch up and maybe end the game in his favour, but it's still a dangerous thing to go to 10 or less health. The minus damage enhance could be quite versatile considering there's a couple of foundations that care about entering the discard pile during the combat phase, but the negative applies to this attack, so you'll need to be careful in case you end up using it on your own stuff. I think Yu Hojo is really going to be a victim of the limited format, but maybe in draft you can pick up a couple of copies of his attacks and give him a go there. Chronostasis is a 6 hand size 27 health character who cares about cards with Breaker or Tech. Faring only slightly better than Yu Hojo, they have 6 different cards with these keywords. Their form, once per turn, allows you to choose one Breaker or Tech card in your card pool and play it. It only requires that your opponent has at least one card in their card pool. Luckily, their Enhance, which is a rival's turn commit, allows you to choose one card in each player's card pool, and those cards will not leave the card pool until the start of your next turn. This allows you to block with an attack that has Breaker, then use the Enhance commit on your rival's next attack to stop your Breaker card and one of their cards leaving the card pool this turn. Then when it gets back to your turn, you can use your attack that you blocked with in their previous turn. I think the only thing that's going to hamper this character is the lack of Breaker and Tech cards. Just like Yu Hojo, they might fare a little bit better in draft, but there isn't that much Breaker or Tech in the set to begin with. Kudoro Saki is actually the character I've chosen to talk about on UK Versus with Brett and Richard. If you want to hear my opinions on this card, you should check out their video linked in the description below. I will say this though, I am a big fan of this character, and I definitely think they might be a bit underrated in limited formats. Tengai is a 6 hand size 25 health character who has the ability to play a card from his own other than his hand, but it's specifically non-attack cards, which means he doesn't get to use as much of the support as other characters will. There are 6 different non-attack ally cards at common and uncommon that he would be able to pull out of his discard pile to either use as a block or play in his own turn. His actual card from the set is an action with the ally keyword. You will be able to trigger this action's ease. They also have Enhance once per turn, your turn. If you've played a card from anywhere other than your hand this turn, your rival discards one card. Without having access to the action, this can be a little bit awkward, given that you'd be playing a foundation into your pool and then having to play another attack on top of your, at this point, 2 progressive, just to make your rival discard a card. Definitely one of these characters that's going to benefit from the more ally cards that you open, but I'm not particularly excited to try them in a limited format. So Lock is a 6 hand size 27 health character with 2 response abilities. The first one is a twice per turn effect that after your non-ranged attack deals damage, you get to freeze one rival foundation. That foundation cannot ready until the start of your next turn. And the second ability is Response Commit. After your rival's combat phase begins, you draw one card for each of your rival's committed foundations. So in theory, you use both the abilities together so that you can freeze 2 of the rival foundations, and then at the start of their turn, commit Lock to draw 2 cards. Fortunately, Lock cares about non-ranged attacks, which means they have a whopping 22 to pick from in the set at common and uncommon. The downside though will be making sure that your rival has committed foundations, as there's only a handful of ways to commit cards, including 3 cards with stun. That said, if your rival's just committing foundations through naturally playing the game, and you're consistently able to get the twice per turn off, then I could see Lock being pretty strong and limited. Given that there's only one asset at common or uncommon, Mimic doesn't seem that playable. They're a 6 hand size 25 health character who can commit one asset when attempting to pass a check as though it was a foundation. They also have Response once per turn. After you check an asset, you can add one attack with a check value of 3 from your discard pile to your hand. And their other ability is a response that says after you commit an asset, this attack gets +2 damage or -1 damage. I think when you look at Yu Hojo and similar characters who care about only 4 of the attacks that are at common or uncommon, you can see where there's a possibility that they might still be playable depending on how the packs open. With Mimic, I think that's incredibly unlikely. The asset they care about as well is an uncommon, so you're only going to get 18 uncommons in total, 3 from each pack. You would need to be opening an XR version of it twice to maybe get to a playable number. Beyond that, it's unlikely. There is 3 other assets in the set at rare and ultra rare. but even opening a few of these, I'm not sure if you could justify being Mimic. Katsumaki is a 5 hand size 27 health character with another ability that makes them a pseudo 6 hander, maybe 7 if you can consistently get the ability triggered. They have 2 enhances. The first one causes them to lose 1 health, and then if this attack deals damage they gain 2 health back. We'll see a payoff for this in a second, but at least on defense, as long as you can pay the health to begin with, this effectively results in -1 damage from that attack if it hits you. So the payoff for this health gain is enhance once per turn, reveal the top X cards of your deck, remove 1 card revealed this way and discard the rest. You may play the remove card as your next card this turn. X equals the total health you have gained this turn. The longer you hold out on this ability, the deeper you will dig looking for that card that you want to play, and it's worth noting you can do this both in your own turn and your opponent's turn. So since this is another one of these play a card from anywhere other than your hand abilities, Katsumaki is going to get access to that support that's in the set. Not only this, they could make a use of the 2 throw attacks to guarantee that the damage is going to be dealt in their own turn. Beyond that, it will be interesting to see how well they survive as a 5 hander with only 27 health who doesn't seem to want to block. I guess in a limited format where there isn't rampant damage pump, then maybe this character will do quite well. At 7 hand size, 20 health, Shin is the only character that can play a card from a different zone from their hand twice per turn without any additional support. We see this with their form. Twice per turn, add a card from your hand to your card pool face down. Your rival names an attack zone, unflip the added card and play it as your next form. If it is an attack whose printed zone is not the named zone, he gets -1 difficulty and +3 speed. In constructed formats like My Hero and Standard, I can see this being a bigger impact than what it will be in Limited. Given there is only 4 low attacks at common or uncommon, that basically alienates that one zone. Not to mention the majority of the attacks are mid, including Shin's specific attack. So if you come up against this character, I think naming mid is the safest bet. They have a pretty straightforward response as well. After your attack deals damage, your rival reveals 1 random card from their hand, giving you a little bit of information about which block zones they might be holding, or if there's any attacks that you need to hold blocks back for in the following turn. Quite interesting trying Shin in constructed, but I feel for limited the ability might just be too much of a gimmick. Tabe is a 6 hand size 27 health character who doesn't really get that much support in the set. They have response once per turn. After your attack is completely blocked, your rival destroys 1 foundation, which is just a nice deterrent from completely blocking their attacks. Hopefully it deters them from completely blocking, but maybe not from partially blocking. Because the enhance has us removing cards from their card pool to give our attack +2 damage and the rivals check to block this attack -1, with a nice wee bonus of letting us draw a card as well. There is only one way to clog your opponent's card pool in the set at common or uncommon, so you're definitely needing them to block a few of your attacks to be able to get this enhance off. Overall, the character's probably fine since they're not keyword gated and you're not having to worry about specific attacks that you're running. It would just be nice if they had a little bit more support. On to our last character with Toya Setsuno, a 6 hand size 26 health character who doesn't need you to open the good stuff, it needs your opponent to open the good stuff out of their packs. Thanks to their form once per turn, you get to choose an attack in your rival's discard pile, and as your next form, play the top card of your deck face down as a copy of the chosen attack, all for the low cost of committing 1 foundation. This is excellent, I can't stress how good this ability actually is. Anyone that's been playing the game for a long time will probably know that I was a big fan of Randall from Yu Yu Hakusho, who had something very similar as their form. Sadly the enhance is nowhere near as good as Randall's, but you can't underestimate flipping 1 foundation to give +2 speed. There is a nice added bonus that if it's a weapon attack it will get +1 damage, but there's only 3 weapon attacks at common or uncommon in the set, so this +1 damage isn't likely. Yeah, it's kinda hard to talk about a character who the best thing they have going for them is not necessarily what's in their own deck, but what's in their rivals. It's such a toolbox ability that allows you to choose the best attack from your rival's discard pile for the current game state. If you open them, I would definitely run some momentum spenders, but even if you don't, I think it's still worthwhile taking momentum as Toya, because odds are your rival will have something that will spend that momentum for you. On the subject of momentum, the face down attack that you end up creating will get the chance to go to your momentum at the end of turn, assuming it dealt damage. I feel like character wise we're ending on a bit of a high note here. There's a decent amount of characters in the set that I'd be happy to play. So we're going to end this here and move on to the attacks, starting with... Kicking off the attacks we have Hardened Fist. It's a 4 difficulty 3 mid for 5 attack, with Fury and Punch. It also has Combo Fury, which might actually get triggered since there's 7 other Fury attacks at common and uncommon in the set. The combo ability is fine, your rival destroys a face up foundation, but they do get to build face down and committed. The bottom enhance might be less relevant since there are only 7 ways to trigger this, most of which are either defensive or at deadlock. On to Fat Grapple, our first throw of the set. The 5 difficulty 2 mid for 1, which can increase its own damage to a maximum of 8. Honestly, I'm not a fan of this card in the slightest. You're looking at having to have 5 ready foundations to make this on par with a 0 gravity lift, and it doesn't even have a relevant ability beyond this. Sure, the deadlock enhance could be nice giving your next attack plus 5 speed, but it still doesn't take away from how underwhelming this card is, especially in the early to mid game. Plummeting Punch is a 4 difficulty 3 high for 4 damage attack with the Fury and Punch keywords. The enhance to be able to change zone and gain a speed bonus is really good and limited. It gives you the flexibility of keeping your opponent guessing what zone's coming next. The Deadlock enhance might be one of the better ones I've seen on a common in the set, but don't be expecting to go to Deadlock often in limited games. Flurry of Punches has the chance to be an absolute powerhouse in limited. Sure, 4 difficulty 4 mid for 4 isn't the most impressive stats, but the fact it comes with a momentum spending ability in EX2, a way to increase its own damage if you're below 10 or less health, and being able to pump your next attack stats by 3-3, makes this an auto include for me. Sure, you need to increase the difficulty of your next attack, but if you're coming in for something big, or you're coming in for lethal and you really want those stats, it's definitely worth it. At 4 difficulty 3 high for 5, Single Spyro is made all the better since it has an enhance that will punish your opponent for blocking it. No one wants to let their opponent draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards in the middle of an attack string, so I can see this attack doing full damage most of the time. So this is another one of the cards that I was speaking about on the UK Versus podcast with Brett and Richard. Check out their video below so you can hear their opinions as well. 4 difficulty 3 mid for 5 damage is fine, and it's got 2 semi-relevant keywords in Slam and Tech. But where this card really shines is that top enhance. The ability is a lot more versatile than it may originally seem, since if you're coming in for an attack string, you look at the top 3 cards of your rival's deck and leave all the bad checks on top while discarding the good ones. Alternatively, if you're only coming in for a poke, you'd look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck and choose to discard all the attacks, reducing the number of attacks they might draw in their following turn. Tentacle Grasp is our first 3 diff attack. It's 1 mid for 3 damage and has the throw keyword, which is actually beneficial since when this goes to momentum, it will go face up. I think this is an interesting little bit of speed hit, since not only are you getting a small kind of poke attack, but you're also getting this repeatable speed hit that's just sitting in momentum waiting to be used. If you do want to make this attack a little bit more lethal though, it pairs quite nicely with Bubble Distraction, since it would become 7 damage thanks to its +4 block modifier. Back to average stats now with Crystal Sword Cutter. 4 difficulty, 4 mid, 4 damage, 2 semi-relevant keywords in Slam and Weapon, and an enhance that requires you opening multiple copies of this card. There's a solid question about how many copies of Crystal Sword Cutter do you need to open before the E really becomes impactful. A vanilla attack that doesn't do anything and just comes in 4 mid 4 is probably still playable if you don't have any other options, but I think this card really starts to shine if you can get into that range of 4+ copies in your deck. Since there are only 2 ways to clog your opponent's card pool and both are character specific, I wouldn't expect to see Centicoil doing massive damage, but maybe if you throw it at the end of an attack string and you're able to get some bonuses off the blocks your opponent has played. Other than that, this is just another generic attack at 4 difficulty, 4 mid for 4. Moving on to our highest difficulty common or uncommon attack, Deadly Fire is a 6 diff, 4 mid for 7. There are 7 characters that can enable the response on this card, since it's one of the few that care about cards being played from zones other than the hand. Realistically, only one character can boost the speed up to 7 by themselves, but if you're planning on running Deadly Fire, it may be worthwhile checking how much speed increases you have first, as a 4 mid for 7 is quite lacking as a 6 diff. Foresight Fusillade is also a 4 difficulty attack, but at least this one's high and coming in for 4 damage. Nice to have something that's getting away from being mid. Same again, it's got 2 semi-relevant keywords with Slam and Tech. Nothing in the set really cares about ranged. So I put the question to you, like, what order do you trigger the enhance on this attack? You look at the top card of your deck, and then if it's not an attack, you discard it, so that you're maybe digging one deeper to an attack. Then trigger the second enhance to potentially draw it. Both times it's a bit of a gamble. Or do you guess the top card of your opponent's deck first, potentially draw one blind card, and then look at the top card of your own deck and discard it? I think that option might be the more consistent way to play this card. Either way, I think this card is worth playing. On to the other 3 diff attack with Hair Razor Slash. It's a 2 speed high for 3 damage attack. The enhance lets you make this a 0 speed high for 5 damage attack, which I can see being used most of the time since 2 speed is a wee bit inconsequential. I'll be throwing this 0 high a lot of the time, just hoping my opponent can't fully block it. It should go without saying, but Insatiable Appetite is really going to shine in Tabe. Other than that, the attack doesn't do much since the bottom enhance requires cards leaving your opponent's pool, and there's very few situations where this might actually happen outside of being Tabe. 4 difficulty 3 high for 4 is fine, but maybe only consider this if you care about the Fury keyword. At 4 difficulty 3 high 4, Lockdown Knockdown is the only common stun attack in the set. So its ability to be able to increase its stun rating by 1 might prove more useful than you'd think. A 3 high 5 damage stun 2 attack is definitely playable, just a downside you need to commit one of your own foundations to make it happen. That said, I think the ability is a bit situational, as you don't want to use it when your opponent's got 5 or more foundations ready. It's actually better used when they have 4 or less ready foundations, as that's when it will make most of an impact. At 4 difficulty 3 mid 3, Piercing Barrage supplies a payoff for 3 damage attacks in the set. Sadly, there is only 2 other common or uncommon 3 damage attacks, so managing to pull this off unsealed is very unlikely, but there's definitely going to be a draft table that gets overrun thanks to this, Hair Razor Slash and Tentacle Grasp all being at common. Beyond managing to get that trio of cards together though, I don't think this is doing much for you. Both its abilities specifically care about 3 damage, and even a character that cares about weapon attacks would struggle to justify running this. Vital Impact is 5 difficulty 4 low for 5 damage, and has 2 of the more relevant keywords for the set. Not only that, it has an ability that gains you 1 health back, and also can increase its own speed. All this while also being one of the cards that care if a card's been played from a zone other than your hand this turn, in which case this attack would gain powerful 3. I definitely think this card will be playable for the most part. It's hard to imagine a deck that just doesn't care about any aspect of it, because even a 6 speed low 5 damage opener is still pretty decent. So on to the uncommon attacks, and we're starting off with Red Counter. It's a 5 difficulty, 5 high, 5 damage attack. It has Fury and Punch, so both the keywords are relevant. And it's got quite a defensive response on it, if you either block with the attack or choose to keep it in your card pool thanks to the enhance. I can definitely see a few decks want to run something like this, because even if you're stopping your opponent from increasing the damage by something as little as 2 or 3, it's still making an impact in the game. On to another one of the cards that I'll be talking about with the UK Versus guys. Bad Guy Roundup. It's a 4 difficulty 3 low for 4 damage attack, with Fury, Powerful 2 and Slam. All the keywords here are relevant, and having access to an attack with Powerful 2 will give you something to spend that extra momentum on. The card has a similar response to Instant Shine and Flash, which has seen competitive play for a long time thanks to the fact that it's a weapon and a ranged attack, but the response to make your rival discard 1 momentum, definitely handy. The fact that this card can also potentially draw you a card is just gravy, since if it is your turn, odds are you should probably have more ready foundations than your rival because you have just had your untap phase. I would gladly run all copies of this that I open. It's probably my favourite uncommon from the set. Rewind Smash is a 4 difficulty, 4 mid for 4 damage Fury Punch. It has an enhance that says if it gets blocked you get to add top card your discard pile back to hand, which is definitely more useful in some characters than others. But the bottom enhance, if you've discarded a card during this enhance step, is not going to trigger as often as you'd think. When I had a quick glance I could only see about 5 ways to discard cards at common and uncommon during the enhance step, and 2 of them are on characters, with some of the others being on defensive pieces that would give you negative stats. Overall, I don't think a 4 mid for 4 damage attack that your opponent gets to decide if you get a card back to hand or not is really going to make an impact outside of decks that care about its keywords, or in Deku. Knuckle Sandwich is a 4 difficulty 2 low for 5 damage attack with the keyword punch and also combos off of punches. The combo enhance gives this attack plus 2 speed, and if your rival's taking damage it also gives this attack plus 2 damage. And the second enhance punishes your rival for trying to block with a non-attack card by giving -2 to their check, effectively increasing the speed again by 2 when they try to block with a non-attack card. Assuming you got all of these abilities to go off, this would end up being a 6 low for 7 damage, low difficulty attack, albeit you would need to play it at least on a 5. I think Knuckle Sandwich is a good example of what I expect from the power level of an uncommon combo attack. Spiral Wave Surge is another 4 difficulty 4 mid 4 attack, with the charge and fury keywords, though there's not really anything that cares about charge at common or uncommon. I'm so glad this attack has an ability that allows you to lose health for plus 2 damage, because thanks to its second ability of if this attack is blocked, you get a bonus to the next check that you make. Odds are I'm probably never blocking this if it gets thrown against me. I can kinda see the same from other players as well. Maybe that justifies it being playable if you can make it 4 mid 6 and no one's going to block it. Stamp Out is a 4 difficulty 2 mid for 5 damage attack with the keywords slam, tech and also combos off of slams. It's comparable to Knuckle Sandwich since it also can threaten 7 damage quite simply, and its speed can be increased multiple times thanks to the response on it, albeit I think you would need to be Sir Night Eye to get it past plus 4 speed. It can threaten 4 mid for 7 quite simply off its own combo enhance, and slams are actually more prevalent at common and uncommon than what punches are, so it may be easier to get this combo off. A 4 mid for 4 damage attack that could draw you a card is probably good enough to be played in a limited format. But Clawstopper also comes with the added bonus of Breaker 1, Punch and Slam, not to mention the fact that once it finally makes it to momentum, you can once per turn draw a card and discard a card. Remember that this is not once per turn your turn, so you get to do it on both sides. I think Clawstopper has a solid argument to be the best uncommon in the set, but the fact it's another 4 mid for 4 just puts me off a little bit. That said, I will play every copy that I open, because Breaker 1 on a plus 2 mid block is going to be useful, not to mention the draw effects. Well, Crystal Crash is a 4 difficulty 2 low 5 damage attack. It's got a slam keyword and it's also got stun 1. Interestingly enough, the top enhance of mill 3 cards and basically seal 1 rival foundation during this attack. You could use it to turn off some stun pieces, but in limited I'm not sure what else you would want to specifically hit. We see that this attack cares about you playing cards from zones other than your hand at some point during your turn, so that this attack can become a free low 6. Considering this is just a free enhance and some of the characters can just do this with their own character abilities, it definitely has a little bit extra mileage to the card. I think a free low for 6 that stuns 1 and kinda gets round stun hate is definitely playable. Locked Up is a 5 difficulty 4 mid 4 damage attack with the punch, slam and stun 1 keywords. If you're playing as Lock you get an additional stun 1. So before we get into the enhances, I need to comment on the fact that this has made me a little bit sad. It's got the same stats as an average 4-diff attack from the set. Sure, it's got 2 instances of stun 1, but you need to be a specific character for that. Sure, one of the enhances could potentially freeze a foundation that was committed due to this attack's stun ability, but if your opponent had a couple of ready foundations at the time, odds are it's going to be something they don't care about that gets frozen. And the other enhance discards 1 momentum for +1 speed for each committed rival foundation, which could be good in theory, but unless there's any major damage pumps in the set, we're just going to have a very fast full damage attack that no one's going to care about. I could definitely see why some people like this card, because I feel on paper it reads pretty well, but I don't think it will have much impact in practice. Right, I've said it twice by now, but there's a good argument that Point Blank Shot could be the best uncommon in the set. It's 4 difficulty, 2 high for 5 damage, and has Breaker 1, Powerful 2, and is a tech card instead of a ranged card, though I guess, is it still a ranged attack if you shoot someone point blank? While it's in your card pool, your attacks get +1 speed, which means this is realistically just 3 speed high, and rival attacks will get -2 speed, so if you do block with it and use the breaker, you're also getting to hamper the rest of their attack turn as well. It has an enhance that cares specifically if this attack was played from somewhere other than your hand, and if so, it can only be blocked by cards with a +3 block modifier or greater. The more I read this card, the more I fall in love with it. It does so much. Anyway, that was the last attack from the commons and uncommons. We'll be moving on to the foundations next, starting with Learning to Harden. The 2 difficulty 5 check. Enhance ability that can either pump damage or give negative speed. And the death response is only usable by 4 characters, albeit 3 of them need you to draft something that will actually allow them to destroy it. On the whole, this card's fine. It can commit for -2 speed, which definitely gets me more excited than committing for +2 damage, but it's nice to have the option if you're just pushing for game. We get the first piece of spam with Red Riot's the coolest. It's a 1/5 with a +3 low block. And this is probably where you first start questioning my opinions on cards, because I'm a bigger fan of this being able to flip for +2 damage and being playable well committed than I am of Learning to Harden being able to commit for +2 damage. I just value the having the ready foundation or the flexibility of using when committed that much more. I'm normally a big fan of E-flip, draw a card and then discard a card, but for some reason seeing it on a 2/5 in Big Appetite doesn't excite me anywhere near as much as seeing it on spam. The Fatgum enhance is interesting. I kinda wish it done something if you removed a non-foundation, but I don't expect to see this often. 1 difficulty with a +1 mid block and a 5 check. Surprise Interception is purely here to ruin Squid Boy's day by denying his attacks going to momentum face up. I definitely feel this is more of a constructed card. Keeping Eri safe is a 0 difficulty 5 check +2 mid block spam foundation, with an ability that will allow you to ready it after it's been committed, due to your rival's effect. This ability is unlikely to trigger due to the low quantity of stun and other similar committing effects in the set, but please note that this readies even if it's committed due to your rival's character's effect. Like most spam, this will be playable just on the sheer fact that it's cheap and easy to throw out. Taken after its name, Practical Studies is actually a quite practical spam card to include in your deck. The 1/5 with a +3 high block, and its enhance says if your rival has not lost health this turn, your attack gets +1 speed. I know +1 speed doesn't seem like a lot, but if your opponent's been blocking, this is a persistent +1 speed. Or alternatively, if you have a few of these in play, that speed will add up fast. The deadlock enhance on here, commit and seal an asset or foundation and give speed, is nice to help close out the game. Lust for Battle is another one of the cards that I spoke about on UK Versus, so I'll be keeping the notes short here. Check out the video in the description for a better explanation of my opinion of the card. So Lust for Battle is a 1/5 +3 mid block spam foundation, which can hack your opponent's next check by 1. There's more ways than you'd think to get this card into your discard pile during the combat phase, not to mention that just checking it when you go to play an attack or play a foundation will also give you the window to use the response. Overall, I think this card is really good, and I'm going to be running as many as I own. A wise man once said, draw card equals more card, so that means Season Brawler must be playable. Sure, your opponent has control over when the response will really go off because they decide to block with an attack, but given that most attacks have a decent block modifier, I wouldn't be surprised to see my opponent block with at least 2 or 3 attacks per game. Look, we both know you would run self-sacrifice if you could only use it for plus damage in a limited format. Nedry-chan of the big 3 is playable. Destroy those committed foundations you've got just to sneak out some extra damage. The only real difference here is it's a high block instead of a low. Agency Trainees is a 2/5 foundation with a +2 low block and it's ally traded. This could be relevant for one of the characters who cares about playing allies from his discard pile, so it would be nice to have this +2 low block on hand. But I don't think the response commit ability that allows you to build your next foundation you play after your attack is blocked is going to dissuade your opponent from blocking you at all. Right, so All Might and Southern Night Eye is a 1/4 spam foundation with a +2 high block and is also ally traded. The first enhance is very reminiscent of the form that's on House of Cards, where you get to put the top card of your opponent's discard pile back on top of their deck. If this is a free, then you're just guaranteeing that they're hitting a bad check, and if they don't choose to block into it on that attack, it means that free check is still sitting there for the next attack, and could prove to be devastating throughout the turn. While the forecheck could let this card down a little bit, I definitely think I'd run 2 or 3 copies of it if I opened them. Foresight is a 0/5 foundation with a +3 low block, which is just going to help you smooth out your turns a bit. The enhance is so-so, but maybe you'll find a use for it if you're unsure if you want to trigger your draw ability or something. Adaptable's a rough one for me. It's a 2/5 foundation that at most can commit to give you +3 speed. 3 speed isn't nothing, but you need to have 3 momentum to get to that upper bracket. Deadlock ability is fun and it really pays you off for stacking a lot of momentum, but having that much momentum and getting to deadlock is very unlikely and limited. Self-Doubt is a 1/5 foundation with a +2 low block, with a response that gives us +1 to our check, assuming your attack dealt no damage. The only thing wrong with this card is the fact the ability is not playable while committed. It's likely this will occur at least more than once per game, as your opponent will be trying to block your attacks. Human Garbage is a 1/5 foundation with a +3 high block. It also has the ally keyword, which we've seen one of the characters cares about. The enhance on it though is hard to judge, since this really comes down to how many copies of this card you open. I think this card will really shine if you manage to get 4 or more copies in your sealed pool, but that's difficult with just opening 6 blind packs. Maybe it's something to look out for low in draft. Confession is a 1/5 with a +2 mid block, and clearly Jasko must have done a lot of testing with this card. Not only is it a first enhance, but it's also once per turn and also your attack, so clearly the ability must be good. It makes your rival discard and draw a card, and if the card they discarded was not an attack, they lose 1 health. This cannot reduce your rival below 1. It's a hard card to evaluate, and I feel like I should really be playing with it a few times to try and judge how useful this first enhance is going to be. My initial gut impression is I'm not a fan of it. If your rival has 2 or more cards in hand, you're giving them choice of what card to discard and draw. I can understand making them discard a card and draw a new card if they only had one option. I feel the life loss is inconsequential since it's only 1. I think I'm more excited to sit across the table from this than I am to actually play it. I feel that most of the foundations we've looked at so far have all been spam, but continuing on with Energy Suction, a 1/5 with a +2 low block. So this is quite reminiscent of an older card that had a similar line of text that doesn't count to progressive for your attacks and had response card pool. The difference being the response card pool after an attack deals damage, gain 1 health, so it gave it use on defense when you blocked with it in addition to playing it in your own turn. I mean, the ability's fine, it's just 1 health each time you're able to connect. There's definitely going to be some characters that care a lot more about this. Heroic Assistance is a 2/5 foundation with a +2 high block and is also ally traded. It's got a response ability that cares about when your rival commits some of your foundations, and similar to the other ones we've seen in this set, it doesn't mention non-character. The Deadlock enhance is useful for ending games, but I'm not sure how often that would come up, So I think you're running this card as just a blank foundation for the most part, and then if your opponent does have some stun or other tricks, it may come in useful. Larceny's a 1/5 with a +2 low block, and it cares about the attack being played from anywhere other than hand for +1 or -1 damage. There's only 6 characters that can meet this requirement without the support of rares or ultra rares, and Shin is the only character that can do it twice. That said, the fact that this card can give minus damage probably makes it more playable, since it means if your rival's also playing cards from other zones, you're still getting an effect out of the card. Look at this as a 2/5 foundation with a +2 high block, and it's probably my least favourite common from the set. Enhance commit, reveal one foundation from your hand, and this attack will get a speed bonus equal to the printed difficulty of the revealed card. This means at most you can commit and give +4 speed. Yes, it's a big number, but that requires you having the full difficulty foundation in hand and choosing not to build it for some reason. Being realistic with this card, it's committing for +2 speed, which just doesn't seem to do enough for me. Resigned is another one of these cards that I spoke about on UK Versus, so if you want to hear my full opinion, you should check out the video in the description below. It's a 2/5 foundation with the ally keyword and the +2 mid block, and it's much better than you think. It's basically an action card that says if you block with it, your rival's next attack gets -2 damage. Or you can use it as an action card that gives your next attack +3 damage, as long as you don't mind playing it +1 progressive. Supportive Friend, a 1/5 with a +2 mid block. The enhance for this is fine considering it's spam. It gives this attack plus a speed and your next attack gets plus a damage. So it's like E-flip, 2 stats but broken over 2 attacks. I love the deadlock ability on this, but don't expect it to be triggered. You're So Obvious is already quite a playable card in my hero format, so facing danger should follow suit, especially in limited. The 2/5 with a +3 mid block, and the enhanced destroy changes an attack's damage to 5. This does exactly what it says in the tin. It's a panic button against those large attacks that your opponent may throw. The response flip isn't relevant all the time, but you might get a situational use out of it. The Strength of a Pro is a 2 difficulty 5 check with a +3 high block that has both built-in speed hate and can also be used to gain you 2 health back. The E-flip for -3 speed being gated by only having 3 or fewer ready foundations is not as big of a drawback as you'd think. The health gain ability I'm less impressed by. Okay, it's nice it's playable well committed, but I don't see players using this ability over the speed hate if they have a choice. A 2/5 with a +3 high block, Body Rejuvenation gives us another speed hate card that can also gain his health. I'm a little bit more on board with this one's health gain, and a little less so with its speed hit. On defense, I don't really want to have to be discarding cards to give minus speed, but I guess in a character like Deku, who has a lot of cards in hand, it's not going to feel like much of a cost. The response remove though after this enters your discard pile to gain 2 health. There should be a few characters in the set that can trigger this just off their own character ability. That's before we consider the couple of cards that are common and uncommon that destroy foundations as cost, or allow you to discard a card as well. I think you're more likely to see this one's health gain get used. Looking for a challenge is another 2 difficulty 5 check with a +3 high block. Got a response that's unlikely to trigger since it cares about your rival committing it with an effect, but if it does, it will give you +3 to your next check, making it incredibly hard to justify stunning into. The enhance on the foundation is the main reason you'll want to run it. You can't underestimate the ability to turn one foundation into effectively 2 for your next check. This card's also going to look amazing in XR. Surge is a 2/5 foundation with a +1 mid block. It's one of the few cards in the set that care about charge or ranged attacks. It's able to give your ranged attack stun 1 and give it speed for each time your rival is blocked this turn, and the enhanced flip gives your charge or ranged attack EX2. I think it's actually the bottom ability that I care most about. I'm not completely sold on committing a foundation to give my attack stun 1, and the speed bonus it gets is less useful for you the more speed it's gaining. If it's getting +3 speed, that means your rival's blocked 3 times this turn, and not unlikely to be blocking a 4th, just purely based on cards in hand and progressive. The enhanced flip to give your charge or ranged attack EX2 is fine. It gives you a momentum spender if you've got enough of either attack type to justify it. While it's unlikely that detailing the plan is going to cause a throw to deal no damage, the fact that it replaces itself on block is justification enough for me to be running this 2-5 foundation with a +2 mid block. If you are playing Sun Knight Idol, this enhance seems incredibly crucial to give you an extra way to mill your opponent, especially during their turn. Off the top of my head, I can only think of one way the response on Sun Eater of the big 3 triggers, especially at common and uncommon in the set. So when you ignore that, this becomes a 2-5 foundation with a +3 mid block that has a bit of situational speed hate on it. Enhanced flip to give -1 speed for each of your momentum is rough. If you don't have a momentum spender, it's probably not worth taking momentum if this is your only payoff. That said, if you are a character that cares about momentum, you could see this doing good work. Crystallize is a 2 difficulty 5 check foundation with a +2 low block. It has an enhance that commits to give +2 damage, or if you're at 10 or less health, it will give a bonus +1. The response on it gives your rival's next attack -2 damage, but this has to be destroyed during the combat phase. There's only 2 characters that can do this, and there's only a small amount of other cards that will enable this ability. I think if you're one of those 2 characters, this card is fine, otherwise it doesn't really excite me much. Caring specifically if the current attack was played from anywhere other than hand. Only 6 characters can make a good use out of We Became More, a 0 difficulty 5 check +3 block modifier foundation. Unless you open a rare or ultra rare that helps facilitate this card, I don't see it being played outside of those 6 characters, other than the fact that it's a 0 difficulty spam. Bubble Distraction is our first 3 difficulty foundation in the set. It's got a 5 check and a +3 low block. I mentioned earlier it's got a neat interaction with Tentacle Grasp since you can commit it to give +4 damage to your throw attack, but it is worth noting that there's only 3 attacks at common or uncommon with a block modifier of 3 or greater, so I don't see Bubble Distraction doing much more than +2 or -2 damage. Food is a 2-5 foundation with a +3 high block. The enhance it gives +1 speed if your rival has no cards on your card pool just means you get to use this on each attack until they finally block. The enhanced flip to remove 1 non-attack from your rival's card pool to gain 2 health is a little bit more situational, and I could only really see it being used if your rival is blocked with a non-attack card. Intense Stare is a 2-4 foundation with a +2 mid block. It has form, once per turn discard 1 or more cards, commit 1 non-character card in your rival's stage with a difficulty equal to or less than the number of cards discarded. While there may be some cases where it's actually worth it to do this, I don't think it's going to come up often. For most characters, discard 2 cards is asking them to lose half their hand to turn off 1 problem foundation or asset. I feel that the 4 difficulty may put some people off, but I would much rather run No Time to Waste over something like Intense Stare. Okay, it's 4 difficulty, but it checks a 5 and it's got a +1 mid block. Instead of form discard cards, I now have form commit 1 rival asset or foundation, but no longer cares about me spending additional resources to commit down things of a higher difficulty. Not to mention the fact the enhance is also pretty good. Since the card's going to be committed anyway, having the enhance be playable while committed just added bonus. That said, I do think it will feel bad to blow up your 4 difficulty foundation for -3 speed. Sloshed is a 2 difficulty 5 check with a +2 low block unique foundation. While only Dodoro seems to care about the response, the enhanced commit is playable by anyone. It would just rely on your opponent taking a lot of momentum to really make this worth it. We've already seen the rate of enhanced commit flip for +2 to your next check, so I would be quite happy to commit for +2. If you can get this to commit for +3 or more, then it's definitely been worth playing. This will be completely matchup dependent though, as some people just won't take momentum. Only 1 common or uncommon asset, and it's the 1/6 with a +2 high block, Takoyaki, which I've probably butchered saying. I may have been a little bit harsh on this when speaking on UK verses. Having an onboard trick that gives +2 or -2 damage and draws your card is fine, I'm just not enthralled about it not being a foundation. It's just if I'm filling out my sealed deck and I don't have any other good options, I'll probably run this. But if I've got some foundations that are at least doing something for my deck, then I don't know if this card makes a cut. No doubt at some point at the weekend I'm going to get beat to death by multiple of these, and I'll be completely proven wrong. On to our first action with Barrier Shield. It's a 2 difficulty 5 check with a +2 high block. It's also ally traded and it doesn't count towards progressive difficulty. Not counting to progressive difficulty is nice if you block with it, or if you use the bottom enhance that stops your rival from being able to add cards to their hand. The other ability, he removes itself to set the speed of the attack to 0 and give the next card you play this turn Breaker 2. While this leaves you in the situation where you're 2 for winning yourself to block this attack, hopefully the Breaker 2 makes up for it. Maximum Hardening is a 2 difficulty 5 check foundation with a +2 mid block. That kinda fixes my issues that I've had with the other assets and actions so far. The response is after you block with it, the blocked attack gets -4 damage and you can commit 1 foundation to build this card face down. And the cost of committing a foundation to build this isn't that bad since you'll be negating 1 progressive and building this card ready anyway. The form isn't the worst thing either. +2 damage to all your attacks for the turn for 1 progressive is not amazing, but it pairs incredibly well with this next card we're going to talk about. Bright Future is a 1/5 action with a +2 mid block and is the pre-release promo for this set, which means all players will have access to 1 copy of it at the pre-release. Don't expect this card to show up in any non-pre-release events unless they are using leftover kits. The enhance removes the action and discards 1 non-attack card from your card pool. If you did, you get to draw a card. So it's basically an action that clears your progressive by 1 and draws you a card to replace itself. You can use it to clear maximum hardening from your card pool after you've used the form ability. But beyond that, awkwardly I don't know if the action actually has a Bright Future in my sealed deck. The other actions we've seen so far just do a little bit more than clear your progressive by 1 and draw you a card. Well, hopefully this video has been of some use to you, and good luck this weekend at the pre-release events. If your store is running a draft event instead of a sealed, don't worry, we also have you covered and there should be a draft video out soon.